My ex-wife faked an emergency to go party with her friends, leaving our kids unattended at my front door. As a result, I filed for full custody, and now everyone is distancing themselves from her. My ex-wife, Carol, 36F, and I, 37M, got divorced about 2 years ago. We were together for almost 12 years, married for 10, and we have 2 kids, a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. Right now, we are about to get caught in a custody battle because I'm fighting for full custody of both my kids. There have been a lot of reasons, but the most major incident took place recently, which made me realize that I cannot trust her, not even a little bit, anymore. What happened was that I was on my way to a work event, and it was her turn to have the kids according to our custody arrangement. We have shared custody, so the kids live with her for half of the month and spend the other half with me. In case we have to go out somewhere and our sitters are busy, we just ask each other to look after the kids if we're busy. But last Friday, she knew that I had a work event hosted by my boss, and I absolutely had to attend. So, I told her that I wouldn't be able to look after the kids in case she had to go out that day. She had agreed at the time, but on the day of the event, she started calling me while I was driving. I ignored it for a while, but then I realized she was calling nonstop. So, I had to pull over and speak to her on the phone. That's when she told me she was standing in front of my house with the kids because she had an emergency to attend to and couldn't take the kids with her. She wanted me to come back and look after the kids because her sitter was unreachable. That was not going to be possible for me because I had somewhere to be, and she had known it. She just couldn't suddenly tell me that she needed to be somewhere as well and expect me to deal with it. Even while I was arguing with her, she hung up and told me to come back home and look after the kids because she couldn't waste time arguing with me. She had to leave and attend to the emergency. I tried calling her back several times, but she ignored it. With no other option left, I had to turn back home to be with the kids because they had never been left home alone, and I wasn't going to start now, especially when they were so young. It was already really annoying, but when I got home and saw my kids standing outside our door looking lost, it really hit a nerve. The least she could have done was wait for me to come back and not leave them alone. I was really upset. When I asked my kids when their mother had left them, they told me that she had left right after hanging up the phone with me. Since then, they had been waiting alone. I was appalled that she would do something like this. The one thing we could agree on was that both of us cared deeply for our kids, but I guess I was wrong. Once I came back home, the kids and I went inside, and they started doing their own thing. I had to inform some coworkers why I was absent from the event, and I felt really upset about missing such a significant work event because my wife couldn't be bothered to plan out her week. It wasn't even like last Friday was the first time something like this had happened. It had started happening quite frequently over the last couple of months, but it hadn't yet become a problem for me. She would randomly pop up, even when it was her turn to have the kids, and tell me I needed to look after them because she had somewhere to be. Most of the time, it was just her hanging out with her friends, which really annoyed me. I couldn't see why she had to make impromptu plans and not keep me informed from the beginning. It would have made things easier for me. I had spoken to her about this several times, but she couldn't be bothered to care about anyone but herself. She had a babysitter, but she frequently relied on me to take care of the kids, even when it wasn't my turn. Don't get me wrong, I love the kids and spending time with them, but it was just inconvenient for her to randomly drop them off because it messed with my routine. If I was going to have to take care of them all the time, I would rather have them live with me full time. At least these things wouldn't come as a surprise. I had given up on her, and then last Friday happened. It was probably the first time I missed something important just because she wasn't a good planner. I was willing to give her the benefit of the doubt, thinking it might have been a genuine emergency. But later that evening, while scrolling through Facebook, I saw a post from her that changed everything. She had forgotten to hide it from me, or maybe she didn't care. Either way, the post was a picture of her and her friends at a club. One of them was sporting a diamond ring in the camera, clearly celebrating their engagement. It was not an emergency that Carol absolutely had to be at, and she knew that. If she had told me the truth, I wouldn't have agreed to come back home, and she would have had to take care of the kids. So, she decided to lie and told me it was an emergency, just so I would miss my work event, and she could go clubbing with her friends. It was so unfair. I had already been thinking about how this had become a pattern with her recently, so I decided to do something about it. I called up my sitter and had her come over within 15 minutes. Luckily, she wasn't busy, and I even offered her extra money since I was having her show up so unexpectedly. After she arrived, I decided to drive to the club where Carol was, to give her a little surprise. It was just a few minutes away, so I got there pretty quickly. I was lucky because even in that crowd, I was able to spot her and her group of friends almost immediately. Then, I walked over to them, and that's when Carol spotted me. They were all drinking, but no one was drunk yet, so I knew people would remember this for sure. Carol looked nervous when she saw me. She tried to smile and said that she knew what she had done was wrong, but she just needed a way to get me to come back home since she really wanted to be there for her friends. She hoped I would understand. But I didn't care about any of that. I turned to her friends and told them it was great that Carol had formed such a strong bond with them, one so important that she was ready to give up time with her kids to be with them. I went on to explain that this had been happening for the past few months since she started at her new company. With her new job, new friends, and new lifestyle, her priorities had shifted. For context, all these women she's been hanging out with recently are under 30, and none of them have the same kind of responsibilities Carol does. I guess she forgot about that. I then told her friends that not only had Carol been spending less time with our kids, but that day she had lied to me about an emergency, just so she could spend time with them. She dropped the kids off at my house and didn't even bother to wait for me to come home before leaving. I congratulated them on becoming the most important thing in her life. I could see all of them looking really uncomfortable, presumably because none of them had any idea about this. Carol just hung her head in shame, not saying a word. After I was done venting, I got back in my car and drove home. Once home, I felt slightly better and started thinking seriously about filing for full custody. Before doing that, though, I decided to talk to my kids. I'm really glad I did because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have found out how they'd been treated at their mother's house over the past few months. When I casually asked my kids if they enjoyed spending time with their mother, they told me it didn't make much of a difference. According to them, their mother was hardly ever around. Most of the time, they were with their babysitter because Carol was either working or meeting her friends. The babysitter, a student, would take care of them most of the time. And when the sitter wasn't available, Carol would drop them off at my place. Hearing this from my children was both surprising and upsetting. The entire point of shared custody is so she can spend time with our kids, but if she wasn't interested in doing so, then full custody made sense. I had already been upset with her, but after talking to the kids, I made up my mind to file for full custody. That night, I contacted my lawyer, and in a couple of days, we filed the petition. Yesterday, Carol was served with the papers. For some reason, she was shocked. She really should have seen this coming, especially since after I showed up at the club to expose her, she hadn't bothered to reach out to me at all. The only thing she did was remove me from all her social media, which didn't make a difference because I already knew what she was up to. There had been no apology, and even though it was her turn to have the kids, she hadn't shown up to take them. It was clear that she didn't care. So, I don't think she had any reason to feel shocked that I had decided to file for full custody of our children. After being served, she finally called me and started bickering. She said she just needed some time away from us to cool down after what had happened at the club, which was ridiculous. She somehow believed that she was the one who deserved to feel angry, but I didn't care. She felt that just because she took time out for herself, she didn't deserve this, and I had no right to file for full custody. It was then that I told her I had spoken to the kids. I knew she had hardly been spending any time with them, and I was aware that her priorities had changed. I don't know if she was having a midlife crisis or something, but I wasn't going to let our kids suffer because of her. What had happened recently was the final nail in the coffin for me, and now I was going to make sure I got the kids to stay with me. If she was lucky, she might get visitation rights. When she realized I had spoken to the kids and knew the truth, she stopped pretending to be the one in distress. She immediately switched her attitude, trying to reason with me instead. Her tone was very different after that. She told me she was sorry for not spending enough time with the kids, but she just wanted to have some fun before she got old. After starting her new job, she met these young women and got carried away, forgetting that they didn't have the same responsibilities she did. Carol claimed that this recent incident had been a wake-up call, and she was going to try to get better and be a better parent to our children. I told her that was great, and she should absolutely try to be a better parent. But until she could prove that, I wanted full custody. It was clear she wasn't able to devote the same time to the kids as I was, and it wasn't fair to the children or me. I told her she could have visitation rights, but I wasn't going to trust her anymore. At that point, when she realized reasoning with me wasn't going to work because I had made up my mind, she started crying. She said everything was happening all at once, and it was unfair. Apparently, after I confronted her at the club, her friends had become distant. Some of them had even stopped speaking to her because they couldn't condone her behavior. She told me it was my fault. Even if I was mad, I should have waited until the next day to confront her. Now, on top of losing her friends, she was at risk of losing custody of her children. She thought I was punishing her too much for one tiny mistake and that it wasn't fair. She felt that she had already learned her lesson and wouldn't repeat this kind of behavior. She was asking me to give her a second chance. But honestly, I couldn't take any chances with my kids. I had to tell her that I had already made up my mind and wasn't going to change it. It wasn't easy for me either because I knew custody battles are particularly difficult for kids. They had already been through our divorce, and I didn't want to put them through something like this again. But for their own good, I had to. I tried to break it to her gently, realizing she had started crying on the phone, but even then, she refused to listen. Then she started throwing a tantrum. She screamed at me, saying I was ruining her life and couldn't punish her so harshly just for wanting to have some fun. She said all she wanted was to feel young again, and that's why she got carried away. She admitted it was a mistake but insisted she deserved one more chance. I felt like she was being childish, so I hung up. But then she started texting me, saying she was really sorry and would try to get better. She promised she wouldn't stay in touch with her friends anymore and would definitely spend more time with the kids, never abandoning them like she did again. Since yesterday, she has kept sending me messages periodically, and it's making me feel really bad about what I'm doing. I know it's probably good for the kids and more convenient for me, but now that I think about it, I'm not sure if it's the right idea to take them away from their mother for something like this. I do agree that Carol messed up, but as parents, don't we all mess up sometimes? The question is whether her mistake is worth forgiving or not, and if there's a chance of it happening again. To be honest, I'm confused. Even though I've spoken to my lawyer and parents about this, I still don't know how I feel. My only intention here is to do what's best for the kids, but I don't even know what exactly that is right now. So, I'm here to ask for advice. Am I the asshole for filing for full custody of my kids after my ex-wife lied about having an emergency to avoid looking after them one evening? Edit. Hey guys, there has been a lot of speculation about why my ex-wife and I got divorced, and it's not what you might think. No, neither of us was having affairs. We honestly just fell out of love after we had our second child, our son. We kind of started drifting apart. When we realized it, we tried to make it work with couples counseling, but even that didn't help much. After some time, we just had to agree that our relationship had run its course. It was really devastating, but getting divorced was a much better alternative than staying in a loveless marriage where we hardly spoke to each other anymore. Our divorce was quite amicable. I know in my original post I made it sound like the post-divorce period has been terrible for the kids, but I just meant that in the normal sense. Suddenly, their parents were separating, and their mother was moving out, so that might have been difficult for them to come to terms with. That's what I meant when I said they had already been through something tough, and I didn't want to put them through a custody battle. Some of you also asked why we didn't approach our parents to babysit the kids when sitters weren't available, especially my ex-wife's parents. Well, my parents live in the suburbs, which is quite far away, and I hardly ever ask them to babysit because it's not convenient for any of us. As for Carol's parents, they live out of state, so asking them is out of the question. People also speculated about Carol having an affair. Honestly, I don't know. I haven't been seeing anyone seriously since the divorce. I've been out on a couple of dates, but nothing serious. As for Carol, I know she's been seeing other people, but I don't know if she's in a relationship. If she is, she hasn't let me know, and she's kept it a secret. Now that the petition for full custody has been filed, I don't think she's going to come clean about any relationship because clearly, her friendships and relationships have negatively impacted her bond with the kids. It's definitely going to come into play during the custody battle. At the moment, I still have no idea what I'm going to do. My friends and family are divided on what I should do next, but I'm still holding out for judgment from you guys. Update 1. Thank you so much for all the comments. I have finally made up my mind. I'm going to go ahead and demand full custody because, no matter how much she apologizes, she can't take back what she did. She won't win back my trust until she proves she's capable of raising our kids. I have also had to sacrifice a lot of fun times with my friends for the sake of our kids, and I don't regret it. If I had to choose again, I'd pick my kids in a heartbeat. It worries me that I'm not sure if Carol would do the same. How can I have shared custody with someone if I'm unsure about that? Parenting means making sacrifices when necessary, and if she doesn't understand that, it's not the right time for her to be a parent to our kids. I also can't forget the incident where she left our kids alone on my doorstep to go party with her friends. That's completely unacceptable, and I can't imagine any parent in their right mind being okay with that. It's been 3 days since I last spoke to her on the phone. Today, I finally responded to all the messages she's been sending me, and I told her I'm really sorry, but I'm not changing my mind about full custody. I also told her it was unfair to blame me for this situation because, if anything, she's the one who created it. Now, she'll have to face the consequences of her actions. It's pretty simple. There's no reason for her to be so stressed out if she truly believes she hasn't done anything wrong. If this matter goes to family court, the judge will decide what's best for the kids, and that's what really matters, not what she or I think. Update 2. I sent Carol a message telling her that I was sticking to my decision about full custody a couple of hours ago. Just a few minutes back, she replied, saying she had spoken to her lawyer and was ready to fight in court. She also said some things about how she realized that just because she was a woman, she wasn't allowed to have any fun. She went on about how mothers around the world sacrifice so much while fathers get to do whatever they want. While that might be true in other cases, it doesn't apply to our situation. I've sacrificed just as much as she has, and I'm not some absentee father who doesn't care about our kids. I don't understand why she's trying to play the victim and dodge accountability. It feels like she's trying to justify her midlife crisis and her need to be liked by everyone by throwing me under the bus for things I haven't even done. For instance, I've never abandoned my kids to party with friends, but she has. She should read her own message and apply it to herself. But whatever, it doesn't matter. We'll see each other in court and deal with it there. Update 3. Hey guys, it's been a couple of months since I last logged in, but now that I have, let me give you some overdue updates. First things first, I managed to get full custody of my kids. Carol has visitation rights, but so far, she hasn't used them. It makes sense because she got completely annihilated in family court. Our kids had a lot more to say than I expected. Apparently, not only had she been spending less time with them, but she had also scared them into keeping quiet about it when they came to stay with me. This wasn't a one-off thing either. Ever since she started her new job, this had been happening. The kids had been too scared to tell me because they feared the consequences with their mother. But once I started insisting that they tell me everything, the truth came out. It turns out people were right about her having an affair. But it wasn't just one man, it was multiple men. I was right about her going through some kind of midlife crisis. She was going out every night with her new friends, and my kids told me they had occasionally seen her come home drunk with some guy. On those nights, the babysitter would rush to get them to bed early, but they had already seen what they needed to see. The things we found out about Carol were deeply disturbing. It was an easy decision for the judge to make, and it was clear the kids were better off staying with me until Carol got her life back together. After the verdict, Carol quit her job and left town. From what I know, she went back to live with her parents. Ever since the proceedings started, the kids have been living with me, and they seem happy. They ask about their mother occasionally, but they let it go quickly enough. We're happy together, and I'm very glad I decided to file for full custody. No regrets.